Okay, in this video we're going to show you how to rewire a comet, asteroid, or meteor for bipolar drivers. This machine has 4 identical motors, and the wire changes are going to be identical for all 4 of the motors. I am just going to show you how to do one of them, and I'm going to pick the motor on the x-axis on the end of the gantry. It's a little more challenging than the others because the wires are a little more taut in through here, but the other ones will be the exact same modification, just a little easier to get to. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this connector right here that holds the harness to the back of the gantry, and I'm going to get that out here in front of me. Then there are a couple little cable clamps on here that is the motor mount and to this little cable clamp up here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to peel back this corrugated shielding off of the wire, and the wire connections that we're going to be changing are down here in this heat shrink. So the next thing that we need to do is grab our razor knife and let's get this heat shrink back out of the way. So just carefully cut down through the heat shrinking. Let's press down the knife blades so that you don't cut into the wire itself. You actually don't really have to cut all the way through it. If you just get it scored a little bit, it will actually politely rip back out of the way. So let's get that out of the way. And then that's going to expose 5 connections down inside of here. And they also have heat shrink tubing over each of those individual connections. And so we're going to do the same thing and get those heat shrink tubes off of the solder joints, exposing the actual solder connections. You can also use some wire cutters if you need to help get a hold of it. Okay, so then that exposes all of the solder joints. So let's just grab our soldering iron and break those joints apart. You'll see that on the unipolar configuration we have 4 individual wires going to wires in the multi-conductor cable, and then 1 set of 4 wires that are wired down to the single common wire. And that one we're going to have to break apart further. I'll show you that in just a second. Heat them up for a few seconds and it should just pop right apart. Okay, and then when we get down to this 4-wire connection here, try to find the best way to unravel it and pull them apart from each other one at a time, because they're actually twisted together before the solder connection is made on them. Okay, so we have exposed all 8 wires coming off the motor now, and I'm going to wire it back on here, but we're going to be ignoring the white wire. You will not need that at all, so we can actually take and just clip that white wire off. down here close. You can see that we're actually using a 6-wire cable, and the blue wire in there wasn't being used already. So, alright, on that end it leaves us green, black, red, and brown. So the next thing we want to do is we want to grab our large heat shrink tubing, and let's pull this connector back out of the way there. And let's get the large heat shrink tubing opened up, and we're going to shove it onto the machine side cable and get that slid all the way back up there. I'm going to keep that heat shrink away from the heat as much as possible while we're doing our solder joints. Alright, so we're going to be wiring these down to 4 pairs of wires. So just looking over at our wiring diagram, we've got the red and blue are going to go together. So let's get them separated over by themselves. And we'll go ahead and slide a piece of the small heat shrink over the top of both of them. Okay, some of these solder joints might be a little stiff. Might need to straighten them out a little bit. Get some of the solder off of them. Get them to go back together. Okay, so. Alright. The next pair is brown and white. Slide a piece of heat shrink over that one. And the next pair is black and yellow. So we'll slide a piece of heat shrink over that pair. And that leaves us with the orange and the green wire. And so we'll slide a piece of heat shrink over that. Alright. So now we've got our pairs grouped together inside of the small heat shrink tubing, and so now it's time to make the solder connections. So we want to put a little bit more solder on these joints. The additional flux that's in the solder will help it to flow together. So I'm just going to just dab up a little solder on these. Alright, so then we sent along this alligator clip tool that is going to help us line our wires up while we're soldering. So I'm just going to grab up here on the outside sheath of the multi-conductor cable, and let's start with the red and blue connection, and it is going to go to the green wire. So let's get the green wire positioned, and red and blue. Let's get them all close together. Alright, so now get them as close together as you can, and let's bridge them together with some solder. And let it set for a few seconds until you see it kind of turn dull a little bit, and now that connection is good. Alright, the next connection we're going to make is to the black wire, and that is going to be the brown and white wire going to it. So let's free that one up, and let's grab the black wire and get it over there, and the brown and white wires. And if you can kind of twist those up a little bit on the motor side to get them close to each other. Okay, there's the second connection. Let me just give you a good look around. Alright, if you have anything kind of sharp hanging off your connection, you can take and clip it back with your wire cutters. Keep it from poking through the heat shrink tubing. Alright, let's move on to the third connection. That is the black and yellow wire going to the red wire. I'll feed more solder into it as we're heating it up, and just make sure that they're making a good solid connection between each other. Just clean that connection up a little bit. And then the last connection is the green and orange wire going to the brown wire. A better angle on this so you can kind of see how I'm doing this. Okay. Alright, so again, examine your connections. If you've got any little sharp things hanging off of them that might poke through the heat shrink tubing, you can clip those off. Okay. So now all of our connections are back together, and after they've cooled off, you can slide the heat shrink tubing over them and just try to kind of center up the connection inside of the heat shrink tubing. There we go, like so. And now take some kind of a heat source. I'm just going to use a lighter. If you got a heat gun or one of those little micro torches, you could also use that too. But we just need to shrink that tubing up. And it doesn't have to be completely tight. It's going to be tight enough that it's not going to slide around. But you'll see it shrink up. There you have it. There are the shrinked up connections, and all sealed up in there where they won't short out to each other. And so, let that cool down a bit. And after that's cooled down a little bit, you can take the large heat shrink tubing and we're going to slide it all the way back up to the entrance to the motor shaft. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to grab the lighter and we're going to heat that tubing up, shrink it down. The large tubing takes a little bit more heat to shrink up, and you might want to roll it around and hit it on both sides. And again, it doesn't have to be completely tight. It's just there for protection. Keep wires from shorting, keep it all bundled together. Alright, so there you have it. There's one motor with the new bipolar connections on. So now I'm going to slide my wire clamp back down, and I'm going to screw that back down over here. This is the only motor on the whole machine that has a wire clamp that's this close to the motor. That's going to be an issue for you. Clamp that back down, and then I'm going to feed our corrugated tubing back down over it. I apologize if the video is not very loud or if there's any issues with the sound. I'm using a new Bluetooth adapter for my GoPro camera, and I'm not real sure how well it's going to work out, but we'll see. Alright, so I got some wire ties that we sent with you too, and I'm just going to put wire ties back in the original locations, and they're just to keep the wires in place. Alright, now you can take your cutters and you can cut off the ends of the wire ties. And there you have it. So just move around and do the same thing to the other three motors, and then you're going to have a new configuration file that we're going to want to install that changes the Linux CNC settings to manage the bipolar drivers. So give us a call when you're ready to do that, and we'll walk you through that. So for now, we're out. Thanks.